Thank you. Good afternoon. Can everyone hear me? Can you hear me at the back? Yes? Yes. Perfect. Okay. So as I say, I'm Jance Hancer, and I've been on the blockchain adventure recently, and I'm here to talk about some of the other digital adventures we've been up to at CC2I. So, like some of the speakers this morning, I wanted to just take a moment and consider words, and actually not just words in general, but their overuse. And when words are overused, sometimes their very definition gets eroded. Sometimes the impact they have on people changes. It can be negative, it can be positive. And sometimes it can make people zone. I have a friend, and literally every sentence she says the word like in it. So much so, it's been increasing over the last few months. And so much so, I'm just hanging out for the next time she says like. And to the point that now the conversations are just waiting for that, rather than understanding and focusing on the wider things that we're discussing. And equally, I have kids. I'm sure many of you have kids, and I have 2 kids, they're 10 and 12, and about 30 times a day, and that's probably conservative, they say the word mum. And I won't say exactly how they say it, because it's really annoying. And between you and me, just in the minds of this room, sometimes I zone out on them. And so I think it is at work as well. And over the last 12 months, GDPR has been one of those words that I've heard many, many times. I don't work in GDPR, but I've heard it many, many times. And I was at a workshop up in Sheffield recently with 7 local authorities. And we were discussing some new modules that we would like to extend a cyber awareness piece of training, a series of cyber awareness training that we put together last year. And we were kind of, we were discussing ideas around what those new modules might look at and focus on. And I said, well, GDPR's got to be a key one. And the room sort of went silent. And I thought, okay, I'm not a GDPR expert. Did I say it the right way round? Did I get a lot of letters the wrong way round? And I was in a room of heads of IT and heads of HR. And I thought, okay, I think that's quite a good idea, but maybe not. And someone piped up and said, it's just been said too much. It's turning people off, it's turning our staff off. We can't engage with people on GDPR. And I found this really, really interesting. Okay, so why am I saying this? I'm saying this because collaboration, I think, is another one of those words. And we've heard a lot about collaboration, and collaboration is a good thing. I fundamentally think it's a good thing. But it does seem to be the answer for many things across our sector. And CC2I is a co-funding and collaboration platform. So I'm slightly worried about this change of definition and this potential loss of meaning. So what CC2I does is we bring local authorities or other public sector organisations together to co-fund and co-design solutions to share digital challenges. And as such, I want to reclaim the word collaboration, because I think it is actually a tool that we have in our kit and we need to use to deliver service transformation. And not only that, to actually engage and understand emerging technologies and what they're going to be able to do for us as we go forward. So that's my word bit over, okay? So I'm going to try and reclaim collaboration this afternoon, and I hope you're with me. So, on to the blockchain journey, but I'm going to call it collaboration because it is. Back in November, I took a phone call from London Borough of Lambeth, and I was speaking to the head of information governance there, and she said to me, we're really interested in blockchain. So, at the time, back in November, I was a blockchain novice. I don't know, do many people know about blockchain in the room? Show of hands. Okay, good. So back in November, I was a blockchain novice. I'd heard about cryptocurrencies, but I'd never made the mental leap to understand how the underlying technology that validates and verifies and secures the transactions for those cryptocurrencies could be used in a different sector. And I didn't really have time to do that. So when they called me, I was quite intrigued. They specifically said, we're looking at a number of particular services, but key to the conversation was the issues around information sharing and information hygiene. And as I go around the country and I speak to local authorities and I go to events like this seems to be a nub of a sort of a big challenge, sort of the treacle that everyone's wading through to get to a digital transformation and digital nirvana. So, could the application of the underlying technology from these cryptocurrencies enable local authorities and other public sector organisations to better share information? And I thought, okay, I'm pretty sure it could. And I reckon I could find 4 other local authorities to co-fund a piece of research specifically looking at blockchain for local government service delivery. And so the journey began. Excuse me. Back in January, we started and we spec'd out what we felt was needed in this first phase. So it was kind of a mixture of technology, understanding the technology. What is a blockchain? How do you start a blockchain? How can it be shared, the permissions and so on? Who develops a blockchain and how does it fit in with existing systems? Equally, we wanted to look at the business side of blockchain and what it could offer local authorities in terms of their service delivery. And so we started a campaign speaking to local authorities, and there were a lot of conversations. There were about 30 conversations I had with 30 different local authorities. And I tell you what, actually, I'm just going to stop a second because there was about 10 people in the room who put their hand up. And I'm going to read, because it's quite intricate what blockchain is. So I'm going to read a definition, and I'm going to read it so I don't get it wrong. And so we fully understand what we're talking about. Blockchain is a distributed digital ledger that securely stores data across a network of computers or nodes. As the name implies, a blockchain is a series of blocks, and each block contains a piece of data. Maybe that's a document, maybe that's an electronic signature, a piece of identification, a unique identifier, and a key which cryptographically links the blocks together within the chain. A blockchain can be public, so for instance, if we think about consultation services, we have a blockchain which lists all of the feedback in terms of the consultation from the community, or it can be private. So if we take the example of procurement and a group of people involved in a particular procurement, it would allow them to see an auditable trail of information to do with that particular consultation, that particular procurement. Within a blockchain, there are different levels of permission. So people who are doing one type of job who need access to the data only get access to the appropriate data for their particular work. And critically, there's not one central database, but multiple versions of the blockchain existing on multiple computers or nodes. Each node hosts an identical version of the ledger, and as such, this is the key to the security of blockchain. As each blockchain is pinned down by a verified person within a fixed group of validators, each piece of the information is verified, validated, and connected to the previous block. And as such, you can ensure the currency and the accessibility and the validity of the data within the blockchain. So this makes it highly resistant to tampering. It ensures that you have data currency and confidence in the data to then deliver the services you want to. Is that clear? Clear enough? Clear enough for us at the moment? Okay. Later on, you'll see I wrote a bigger briefing note on blockchain, which is available from Socitm. So hopefully, if you need more clarity on that, that's available to you. So we launched the campaign in January, and we had 30 councils talking about blockchain. And there was a big division of knowledge. Some people were real evangelists. Some people knew a lot about blockchain, and some people knew nothing. But they understood that it underpinned cryptocurrencies, and they understood that it could have potential in terms of information sharing. And in those 30 different conversations, that information sharing piece came up time and time again. The need for sort of the nirvana state of one version of the truth. I've heard that often, sort of having one version of someone's data to then deliver the services that they're entitled to. Equally, there was a lot of conversation about an audit trail in terms of a transaction or a person, excuse me. And blockchain is able to remove boundaries, so boundaries between services in a local authority, between other public sector bodies. There might be geographical, organisational boundaries. It has the ability to remove those boundaries by allowing secure access to the information required. And critically, I think a lot of people were talking about, and this was something I hadn't thought about, the sort of relationship between government and citizen, and how blockchain had the potential to transform that relationship. Some people were sort of seeing a way that citizens could be in charge of their data. They could be the ones, the custodians of their data, which kind of moved the onus and pressure from public sector to the citizens and business. So this was all very interesting, and we began the journey. So it was January, let's just see, and the conversations began. And these are the kind of services that the councils were these are the top 10. This is what people were interested in terms of blockchain. Most of them, as you can see, come down to information hygiene, information cleanliness, and validation. So there's a lot of different ideas around blockchain. And so we were moving. The idea had sparked something. It sparked an idea that actually, yes, there was potential to deliver something in the future, but Lambeth, to go back to Lambeth, they didn't have the money, they didn't have the resources to do it in-house. They could have commissioned the research, but they wanted to do something, and I felt that we could find others, as I said. The idea being, Lambeth paid 20% of the cost of the budget of the piece of local government focused research, but got 100% of the value, and so did the other 4 at the table. And so the conversation started, and on March the 6th, the first combined authority from Devon said, yes, we're interested, we're willing to put our money on the table and be part of this group to steer this research for local government. A few days later, London Borough of Waltham Forest said, yes, we're in too. They had a particular interest around e-voting and the land registry, so they said we're at the table too, closely followed by the Greater Manchester Combined Authority. So we were on a roll. It had taken me about 10 weeks having these different conversations, but we were on a roll. We had 3 people at the table. I then went back to Lambeth to speak to my contact there and say, right, we've got these 3 who have signed up in the last 10 days. We're on a roll, we just need to find a final partner. So I wanted to actually move to a different authority. So her replacement answered the phone and gave me the time, and we spoke about it. And he said, okay, well, it sounds very interesting, but I'm at the bottom of the GDPR mountain. Blockchain is not on my radar right now. I don't have the money. And Lambeth was suddenly, when they started the process all the way back in November, they were out. But as I say, we were on a roll. We had these people, already, GMCA, represent quite a number of local authorities. So we thought we were going to continue this. We've got traction. I went to present at Kent Connects, and they agreed on the spot. 14 local authorities said, yeah, we want to take a place at the table and steer this research. As I said, at that point, Socitm heard about what we were doing, and we were using their network to promote it, and they asked me to write a blockchain briefing paper, which I believe is still on the website and is available to delegates. So that was a good sort of moment to sort of take stock and put something in place. After the Easter break, Monmouthshire signed up, the final partner at the table. They were interested in blockchain for a number of reasons, again, mostly around identity, looking at blue badge criteria and entitlement services. So we were corporate. We had 5 members, middle of April, so it would be a 10-week journey, and we were ready to go. We were ready for those 5 authorities to steer this piece of research to be relevant to them and the wider public sector. So we kicked off. We had a workshop on May the 4th, and it was really good. Those people who had different conversations and had different opinions about blockchain, sitting around the table, they'd never met each other before. They're disparate from across the country, and but a lot of their ideas and mostly a lot of their challenges were exactly the same. Again, looking at identity, that was one of the main conversations we had on the day. We had a conversation for about 2.5 to 3 hours. And a lot of it focused on data standards and access. How do you access information in the blockchain? How do you store it? What's the right format for information to be in that blockchain? How would it integrate with existing system architecture? What's the cost? And particularly around GDPR and the right to be forgotten. If you cryptographically lock down some information, how do we deal with that right to be forgotten? There was an interesting conversation about data hygiene and whether an authority should actually just start from scratch. I think someone mentioned before, that data cycles and sort of 6 months down the line, potentially data isn't as accurate as it needs to be. Should, if you start a blockchain, start from scratch with a piece of citizen data? And all of this was very interesting. So they formed the framework, which is now ongoing. The piece of research has started. As I said before, there's a technical and a business focus to it. The desk-based research and interviews with technology providers in the area, as well as sort of case studies from local, national and international government are all being collated into this piece of business research, technical research, and then we're going to look to the co-funding partners to then steer us as to what kind of candidate local authority services blockchain is best suited to solve or help deal with, excuse me. So by mid-July, we should have the report signed off by council co-funders. And you know, it's public sector funded. So we're going to, on permission of the original 5, we're going to share it with the local authority, the wider local authority family across all local authorities, so that there's better information specifically looking at local government services around blockchain and giving some next steps about what we're going to be doing. Potentially, and only if it's appropriate, we'll look then to see if there are some councils who are keen to look at proof of concepts. It might be that this is not the right time for local authority to look at blockchain, and that's a fine outcome. But if there is opportunity, and if it is appropriate, then we'll look to co-fund around particular services, again, using the networks that we're engaged with, the Socitm network and so on, to bring councils together to co-fund proof of concepts. And I know up in Scotland they've had a couple of proof of concepts ongoing, which will be cited in the research as well. So that's my blockchain adventure. Back in November, I was very cagey, wouldn't have conversation, and now I've written a briefing report. So I've certainly come on in 6 months, and hopefully what this piece of research will do is give a good grounding for local authorities and public sector more widely about the opportunity blockchain offers. So I'm going to do a little bit about how we know that collaboration works, and I'm really going to try and reclaim this collaboration word. This time last year, I was engaged again with a similar co-funding process, trying to get councils to co-fund some cyber awareness training. We had a relationship with the film production company behind the BBC cyber awareness training. It's mandatory cyber awareness training, and we felt it wasn't a massive leap to rework that series, there's a video-based series, to be public sector focused. So we started the co-fund, and these 10 councils came to the table and said, I can't afford really council-focused cyber awareness training. In fact, there's none on the market that's just about time. You're joking. No way. Okay, I'm just going to go over because this is actually a really interesting bit. Okay, there's a lot about Wales, so sorry. Sorry, so we got these 10 local authorities together. That's all right, isn't it? Sorry, Chair. Thank you. Hopefully it's interesting. You'll just bring me later. So these 10 councils came to the table, each putting in a relatively small amount of money, and for taking that risk, they have Dojo now. That's what the cyber awareness training is called, in perpetuity. They took the risk, they worked with the filmmakers to co-design, to actually talk to local authority staff, to use the protocols, use the right words, the vernacular of local authorities to make that awareness that much more engaging. I'm going to go. Okay, so, and it was championed by Socitm Wales, and we've had, there's 16 local authorities now in Wales that have signed up to Dojo, and across the country there's 45 councils who've now rolled out Dojo because, 100% because it was co-designed with councils, because it was relevant to the people that the cyber awareness needed to talk to. Since it was only delivered in December 2017, but it already covers 275,000 public sector staff. 2 weeks ago, NHS Wales rolled it out, or commissioned it, and are going to roll it out across 50,000 frontline staff, and we've got the first commission from a Welsh education organisation. Off the back of it, we've got 4 local authorities to co-fund the housing version, to be housing specific, to talk specifically to housing staff and their residents. So it kind of proves that collaboration does work. This is an excellent example. Okay, she's going to tell me if I carry on. There's going to be more around Dojo, and I'm around, so if anyone wants to talk about the additional modules that I mentioned right back when I stupidly said GDPR, there are going to be some additional modules, and they actually are going to cover stuff around GDPR, which is not going to say GDPR. It's information sharing, life cycle of data, and so on. These modules can stand by themselves, or they could extend Dojo as it sits now. And just one thing about Welsh translation. We started a conversation actually with Phil Bear from Cardiff, and he engaged Socitm Wales, and when we knew, just like what Martin said before, when we knew that 5 local authorities in Wales were interested in commissioning Dojo, the money in the pot allowed a Welsh translation to be created. So, and then some of the people in the room I know helped with some of the e-learning that underpins the video modules to be translated into Welsh. So Dojo exists in Welsh, because of the collaboration within this room, because of the collaboration of the wider local authorities across the UK. So I think it's a really good example. And my final thoughts are literally, it takes time, as many of the speakers have said today, it takes multiple networks. But co-design is key. For us, we feel that having a commercial footing for the end products actually helps, because nothing is maintained for free. Nothing is maintained, solutions aren't maintained on goodwill. Often sort of pots of funding do actually dry up, and those sort of great innovations that were pumped prime are left on the shelf or just being used by a few partners. So for us, having a commercial, although very affordable sort of model underneath it, it allows those solutions to grow for the benefit of the wider public sector. Of course, I'm looking for more challenges. It was blockchain back in November. I'd like a new adventure, and I'd like to come talk to you about that in the future and maybe for you to be involved. So that's it. I'm a little bit over time, but I hope